I think we're going to get into our topic today, which is data and app analytics. We have heard about data and analytics all day long. We know about the explosion of data that's happening around us within corporation, in personal lives. And that's changing the business models for larger corporations, as well as creating opportunities for smaller firms, startups, so on and so forth. And we have a great panel here, so we want to tap into their experiences to tell us what are they seeing in the field out there. I'm going to lead off by one of my client examples, which is a car manufacturing company, and we heard this morning as well. Today's connected car probably has 100 to 200 sensors or computer, and that's generating data by the second. With that, the car manufacturing company gets to know what is their engine condition, tire condition, the usage of the feature, the quality of different gadgets that are there in the car, and that's constantly sending the signals, depending on what features we are talking, back to the data center. And there is a whole ecosystem or a value chain who is actually benefiting from this opportunity. So that monetization could happen. Thanks. The monetization could happen or could be leveraged by the car manufacturers themselves, by their suppliers, by the dealer network, by, as an example, the Wi-Fi or a telecommunication company, or even, for example, if the driver is listening to a radio station, what radio station or anchor is an individual listening to, what time of the day are they listening to, where are they driving, what is the road condition, so on and so forth. So at the end of the day, who owns that data, right? And as an individual or a customer, what share would I get from the monetization opportunity? Those are all unanswered questions. And again, because I work at KPMG, we look at the non-traditional things like tax, for example. If the company is benefiting or leveraging the benefit of intangible assets, then how do you handle transfer pricing? Those are all unanswered questions. So I want to, again, point to our panel here and maybe start with Navin to share stories, or what are you seeing as the changing role of the CXOs within corporations that you work with?
Yeah, so by the way, we are hiring too, and we probably have a much bigger booth than he has. So, so yeah, I think, thanks, Viral. So basically, I think as I think Ken in the previous session mentioned as well, we're seeing actually from a IT services standpoint who primarily work with the CIOs, or until now have worked primarily with the CIOs, a fundamental structural shift happening, right? And that's because of, as we heard, things like this whole thing called digital. I think Mark Andreessen has called it software's eating the world. Actually, we like to put it as, given all our customers are actually the people who have traditionally grown up in the physical world, like the insurance companies and oil and gas, we like to think of it as software is actually dining with the world, not eating the world. So, but anyway, I think that's really the fundamental structural thing that we are seeing. So again, leading off with I think agriculture seems to be a favorite example here, but I'm going to take the example of Monsanto, right? One of our a kind of company that obviously works a lot with outsourced providers, IT service providers. So what is Monsanto doing? So they actually bought, if you guys know, a company called Climate Corporation, right? I think last year, which was founded by some folks from a small company next door. And what does Climate Corporation does? It was actually a big data company, right? That would process basically weather data and sell insurance to farmers based on that data, right? And then they recently bought another company, I think it's called Precision Planting, that makes actually equipment to actually do farming. And this Precision Planting can actually map the exact soil information and everything while you're actually farming. So instead of actually putting sensors, as I think Ken talked about, this equipment can actually, you don't have to put any sensors while you're actually tilling the land or whatever, it'll actually tell you what that information is. So given Monsanto, who makes seeds, then combining with big data that Climate Corporation brings, and then actual data from the soil about water information and so on, actually combine all that and sell a new service to the farmers, in addition to just selling seeds. And the service in this case actually is insurance, which they got from Climate Corporation, right? So I think this is what a CIO now actually has to contend with in some sense, right? So in the past, while they are primarily, and some of that, if you look at the SaaS kind of part of the transition, what happened there, in my opinion, right, is that it was to a large extent kind of the same thing for less from a cost standpoint. But what is happening now, and data is a big, big part of that enablement, is really this structural shift where you now want to actually do new things, a new business model in a traditional enterprise, right? And that's causing the role of the CIO to kind of obviously not just a consumer of technology, and where they would typically buy kind of off-the-shelf packaged applications, because that was the intent. You do something very well-known, and then you try to find out how to do it at the cheapest possible cost, right, as an example, right, as the primary metric. But now there's this business model that they need to be part of in the evolution, and that's kind of a big shift from how they actually look at technology, how they look at basically vendors like ours, how they look at other companies that provide similar technology.
Sure. Let me start by echoing what Navin said out here, right? Without a doubt, I think this digitalization of the enterprise, the new digital enterprise, is a driver for many of the trends that we're talking about out here, right? And it's not just mobile. It's not just big data. It's not just SaaS. It's a combination of all of these things, right? If you go to a typical enterprise today, you got about 200 to 300 apps, right? You got everything from mobile apps to SaaS apps to internally created apps to externally procured apps to IoT apps, you name it. And all of these apps are spewing out a lot of data. And it's very important for the CIO, to not only just monitor and manage these apps, but also take that data and do something more interesting with it, because that's how the business is going to measure the CIO. I'll sort of echo, similar example. And it looks like, IoTs and farmlands are the soup du jour examples that we are giving today. We have a customer who is a big-time, one of these farm tractor makers. Maybe they buy Monsanto seeds for all that I know. So, and what these guys do is they have a GPS on these devices. And now we would always think that these GPSs are to make sure that the tractors run in the straight line. But that's not the case for this company. What they're trying to do is, or what happens is that these tractors, for all of you who don't know, get stolen all the time, right? There is a big black market for tractors. People actually take tractors and drive them off somewhere else. So what they need to do is make sure that these GPSs are constantly transmitting information about their location. And if they ever leave a perimeter, that information gets back to the company right away. So again, here is a very non-traditional use of data, where you're taking data, you're passing on this data to a network which is consuming this data, analyzing this data, and making some business sense out of this data. In this case, to make sure that the tractor stays within the perimeter and is not getting lost. So there are, again, very many varied examples of data collection, storage, and processing that we are seeing within our customer base today.
Yeah, no, absolutely, great example. I'll share one example from our standpoint as well, which is, again, in the non-traditional area that we typically would not think about. And again, I'll go back to tax. As you may know, some of the large corporations who invest heavily in R&D, they get a lot of R&D tax credit. And we have deployed, and when we studied a lot of our large global top 50 corporations, we saw that the R&D tax credit that they were taking advantage of across their different plants, across their engineers, how they were capturing it and how they were recording it, there was tremendous variability across the chain of individuals and processes that were involved. And what we proposed and actually did a pilot was using machine learning algorithms to give them the areas where there was highest variability and propose to them that this is a case where you can take advantage, this particular activity, this particular employee, the time he's charging doesn't seem like it's captured in the right bucket. And that is bringing enormous value to the corporations in multi-million dollars. And again, we are talking about non-traditional areas where one would think about using machine learning or advanced analytics to gain value. So with that, since this is, again, entrepreneurship forum, how do you see the role of entrepreneurship or new small startups coming up in this area?
So I think so by the way, so I'll tell you why the startup part is very critical, again, in the IT services business. I think Infosys itself announced a $500 million innovation fund. You'll hear more about it later. But the reason for that is very clear, right? So as I said, because of this transformation that's going on, a lot of what a CIO or a buyer inside a large enterprise now is struggling with or grappling with is a lot of new things, right? And the innovation, for good or bad, is not coming from the traditional enterprises for the kinds of things they want to do. So companies like Kalyan's, we saw a lot of companies mentioned in the previous talk as well. So, and there is a much, much bigger appetite that was probably the case before in these Fortune 2000, Fortune 1000 companies to actually co-innovate and co-create with small companies, right? And if you were to kind of focus on one or two areas, I think it's on the application side where I personally see a lot of interest. So I'm differentiating applications from just pure platforms, right? So applications, we saw an example that I gave earlier about Climate Corporation that's using big data to actually provide weather data. So I think that's where I think there is a huge, huge opportunity to actually go solve some real hard problems for these large companies.
Yeah, at AppDynamics, we're the poster child for what kind of opportunities data and data analytics can provide. AppDynamics started out as a application performance management company. So we will go into companies and we'll tell you if your application is working well or not. And in the process, we realized, hey, you know what? We're gathering a lot of data about these applications. We know who's using this application. We know who's using a mobile app. We know where they're using the mobile app. We know what device are they using. We know what geos are they using it from. We know what they're doing with these mobile apps. Why not take all this data that we are gathering today, obviously focused on a very operations use case, and then apply it to data analytics. And thereby, we created a whole new business for our company. So for any of you entrepreneurs out there, there's a whole world of opportunities that can be built around the data in these software applications. And so obviously start out with a very focused use case. That's the right way to go about doing it. But then once you're in the application, the world's up to you in terms of what you can extract, what you can process, and what kind of insights you can bring to your customers.
So thanks, Navin. Thanks, Kalyan. I think we are up with the time. So thanks, everyone. Unless anybody has any last-minute question, we'll wrap this up. Thank you.